In 2024, the world watched as Iran launched missiles and drones directly at Israel, an unprecedented move that pushed the Middle East to the brink of full-scale war. 2 years later, in 2026, the tension has only intensified, with both nations engaged in escalating exchanges of military strikes, cyber attacks, and proxy maneuvers, bringing the region closer than ever to a direct and potentially catastrophic confrontation. For decades, these two nations had operated in the shadows, through proxies, cyber attacks, and covert operations. But now, the threat is tangible, visible, and dangerously unstable. This wasn't always the case. There was a time when Iran and Israel were not enemies, not even rivals, but allies. So how did we get here? To understand this, we have to go back, long before missiles, long before nuclear threats, to a time when Israel did not exist as a state. In the early 1900s, Iran, then known as Persia, was a vast empire navigating modernization under its monarchy. At the time, Jewish communities had lived in Persian lands for centuries. There was no ideological hatred, no direct confrontation, no reason for conflict. In fact, relations between Persians and Jews were largely peaceful. Everything changed in 1948. That was the year the modern State of Israel was created. Its birth reshaped the Middle East overnight, triggering wars with neighboring Arab nations. But Iran stood apart. Unlike many in the region, Iran, under its monarch Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi, quietly recognized Israel. Not loudly, not publicly, but strategically. The Shah saw Israel not as an enemy, but as an opportunity. In a region dominated by Arab nationalism, both Iran and Israel found themselves isolated in different ways. That isolation became the foundation of a quiet partnership. Throughout the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, the two countries developed deep, if discreet, ties. Oil flowed from Iran to Israel. Intelligence flowed both ways. Israel's Mossad and Iran's Savak worked together, sharing information and coordinating against common threats. Trade expanded. Security cooperation deepened. On the surface, it was business. Beneath it, it was alignment. Two nations, different in identity, but united by shared interests. And for nearly 3 decades, this quiet alliance held, until 1979. The Iranian Revolution didn't just change a government, it changed the entire identity of the country. The Shah was overthrown. In his place rose a new leader, Ruhollah Khomeini, who brought with him a radically different vision for Iran, one rooted in Islamic ideology and fierce opposition to Western influence. And in this new worldview, Israel was no longer a partner. It became an enemy. Almost overnight, diplomatic ties were severed. Israeli officials were expelled. The Israeli embassy in Tehran was handed over to the Palestinians. Iran began referring to Israel not as a state, but as an illegitimate entity. This wasn't just politics, it was ideology. From this point on, the conflict between Iran and Israel would no longer be defined by borders or treaties, but by beliefs. And beliefs are far harder to negotiate. In the 1980s, the rivalry entered a new phase. Not direct war, but something more complex. A shadow war. Iran, now isolated from the West, began expanding its influence across the region. Not through conventional armies, but through alliances and proxy groups. One of the most significant of these was Hezbollah in Lebanon. Armed, funded, and trained by Iran, Hezbollah became a powerful force on Israel's northern border. For Israel, this was a new kind of threat. Not a nation it could confront directly, but a network it couldn't easily eliminate. The battleground shifted. No longer just Iran versus Israel, but Iran's allies versus Israel's security. This pattern repeated itself across the Middle East. In Gaza, Iran supported groups like Hamas. In Syria, it backed the Assad regime. In Iraq, it cultivated influence through militias, each move expanding its reach. and tightening the circle around Israel. Israel responded the only way it knew how. Precision, covert operations, targeted strikes, air raids in Syria, assassinations of key figures, cyber attacks designed to cripple Iran's growing capabilities. This was war, just not the kind fought with declarations. For years, both sides operated in this gray zone, pushing, testing, retaliating, but always stopping short of full-scale confrontation. Then came the nuclear question. As Iran advanced its nuclear program, alarms went off in Israel. To Israeli leaders, a nuclear-armed Iran wasn't just a threat. It was an existential danger, something that could not be allowed. This raised the stakes dramatically. Now the conflict wasn't just regional, it was global. Iran, in turn, doubled down, advancing its nuclear program, strengthening alliances, and expanding missile capabilities. The shadow war was no longer hidden. It was becoming visible, tangible, unavoidable. Then, in 2024, everything changed. For the first time, Iran directly attacked Israel from its own territory. Missiles, drones, a clear message. The rules had shifted. Israel responded in kind, signaling its willingness to escalate. What had once been a calculated rivalry was now heating up rapidly and dangerously. Today, the Iran-Israel conflict stands at a crossroads. It is no longer just about ideology or influence, but about deterrence, power, and survival. Both nations see each other as critical threats. Both are deeply entrenched, and both possess the capability to unleash devastating consequences, not just on each other, but across the region. The question is no longer whether they are enemies, that is clear, but how far this will go, because history has shown something important. This conflict did not begin with war, but with partnership, shared interests, and quiet cooperation. Which means one thing: if it could change once, it could change again. But whether that change leads to peace or something far worse is a story still being written.